funds from banks as a way of funding development projects?
Well, thank you very much. But first of all, it is not just Laikipia County that can raise monies from the capital markets. All counties in Kenya today can do so. And this is contained in the Constitution of Kenya. It's also contained in the Public Finance Management Act. In terms of our credit rating, the reason it is encouraged, counties, countries, companies, all encouraged to get rated, because rating is a market instrument to help potential lenders and investors understand the creditworthiness of that institution. So for us as Laikipia, this is why we got rated by GCR and obtained a very reasonable rating, BB+, which indicates a sort of modest to strong capacity to finance any debt or to repay any debt that we may borrow. So broadly, all counties can borrow. In the specific case of Laikipia, we have gotten credit rated as an additional step of helping the market to understand us and our creditworthiness. And we are quite pleased with the rating, and we expect it will improve in the coming days because, as you rightly pointed out, Brenda, that the more we increase our own source revenue, the better the rating. The more we are able to tame the wage bill, the better the rating. The more we get clean audited accounts, the better the rating. So we are quite pleased, but we believe we will get even better with the passage of time. In the immediate future, it is our intention to raise a bond. This is what we are discussing with Treasury. So it won't be a straight vanilla sort of loan from a bank. Mm-hmm. Instead, we are looking for an infrastructure bond of about 1.4 billion.
So Governor,
finance, yeah.
So Governor, Laikipia County becomes the fourth to receive its creditworthiness, report. I'm actually allowing it to borrow development money from the banks. So talk to us about probably how much your county government is planning to borrow and what this fund will be used for.
Our plan is to borrow 1.4 billion. As I said, we will not really borrow it from a bank. We will issue an infrastructure bond. We expect it to be about a 10-year bond. It will be for urban infrastructure. We have a program called Smart Towns in Laikipia, where we improve our towns and market centers by paving the roads, providing utilities like water and sewer, lighting up the streets, and so that people have businesses and our people have a proper working environment. It is also going to go for irrigation. We have lined up 5 specific dams that are mid-sized dams, where up to about 300 to 500 farmers per dam use the water to irrigate and therefore improve their productivity.
All right. So yes, Treasury is giving the county government, so far now it's in your county is the fourth, to be okayed by Treasury, to borrow money from the banks. But don't you think, as much as counties are being allowed, to borrow from the banks, there is need to have strict mechanisms actually put in place to ensure that country they borrow wisely and are actually able to repay the loans that they get?
Well, without a doubt, Brenda, and again, I want to expand it. It's not just borrowing from the banks. It is raising money from the capital markets. So, for instance, in the case of Laikipia, we are going to issue a bond. A bond is where many investors will be able to participate in that bond, including Laikipians themselves. Because remember, the bond is sold in lots of about 50,000. So, including Laikipians themselves, they will be able to lend or using the bond, and again, the bond will be listed on the capital market or on the securities exchange, so that you can buy and sell it. But to your point about the strictness of how this is done, how the monies are applied, I agree with you completely. And this is why the Public Finance Management Act, the Public Finance Management Act regulations, as well as an additional framework that was issued by the National Treasury a couple of weeks ago. All those instruments are to govern how counties raise monies from the capital markets and how those monies are applied. So you're quite right.
Yeah, in fact, I was about to get to that point of how the monies are applied because, you know, there is a concern on how counties have been using some of the funds for the development projects because now let's bring it down to Laikipia County because that is where our focus is today. So the monies you've said will be applied to fund projects, and will those projects, are they likely to demonstrate a potential compensating revenue streams or even credible environmental protection value?
Absolutely. As part of the regulatory approval, now when we take, as Treasury, as their debt management office is looking at this bond, part of what they are looking at are the underlying projects. So when we say Kariunga Dam, they want to see there's a feasibility study that was done, the designs of the irrigation for the 500 farmers we are talking about is there. They want to see what is the tariff that the farmers will be paying for the water that they are using for irrigation, and so on and so on. How many jobs do we expect to create with that particular project? So that is the underlying documentation, if you will, that the regulator is looking at in order to allow for the bond to go ahead. And that is for all the projects that are to be financed by the proceeds of this bond, that economic viability has to be demonstrated to begin with.
But then, Governor Nderitu, what is the best way to borrow? Is it to allow the counties to have either loans guaranteed by National Treasury, or the other option of course, having Treasury to borrow and on the other hand, lend it to the devolved units at their request?
Ultimately, Brenda, you know, in the trade, my background is, of course, financial markets and so on. In the trade, we talk about municipal finance or municipal bonds, or sub-sovereign bonds. So the world over, entities that are not sovereign, they are not nations below, like cities, municipalities, companies, they can go to the capital markets and be able to raise money. And I think that eases the burden placed on the National Treasury. So at the moment, where we are moving in the right direction to a point where counties should be able to issue securities without requiring a Treasury guarantee. But as we are now, we will issue with a Treasury guarantee because, you know, it's at the beginning of what we expect in the future to be a very vibrant way for the devolved units to mobilize resources from the capital markets to be able to finance development. So we think we are in for exciting times going forward.
So what is really looked at, you know, before, you know, Treasury gives that okay, the green light, before you're given that green light? What do they look at, you know, at a specific county?
First and foremost, as you rightly pointed out earlier, they are looking at what cash flows do you have. So because when you raise money or when you borrow, when you issue a bond, you have to repay it. So where is the cash flow going to come from to ensure that you are repaying? Of course, we also look at your history, you know, so if you look at 3 to 5 year audited accounts and how you are, you know, how you have been performing. Of course, we also look at something we call fiscal responsibility. And this is about the balance between how much money is going to development projects, how much money is going to recurrent, including particularly wages and salaries. And there are certain parameters put there because most of the money should be able to go to development, not just for paying salaries and other recurrent expenditure. So they look at all those things, and they also look at your audited accounts to see what is the view of the auditor general in terms of the management or the financial management of the county.
Mm-hmm. You know, Governor Nderitu, the reason as to why I'd asked you that to paint for us a picture on what they look at before you're given that green light, then it means so many counties will be locked out, because so far it's only 4 counties that have been given that green light. And these counties that might be locked out probably are counties from the ASO region, the arid and semi-arid.
Well, I wouldn't, I wouldn't say so, Brenda. I mean, look, it is for each county government. It is our responsibility as governments to manage the affairs of our counties properly. We have a fiduciary responsibility in terms of managing the resources, however little or a lot any county may have. We have to manage those resources properly. So, and also, rating, like credit rating, demonstrates a willingness, an openness that we as a county, we as a government of Laikipia, open our books to everybody in the world to see and to judge whether we are managing the affairs of our county properly. And that really is what is required of us, in my view, as leaders, is that willingness to be subjected to scrutiny, because it brings about market discipline. It makes us, whatever few shillings we have, we are able to utilize them in the most effective manner and to move our economies forward. So I don't think that the rules lock out anybody. The rules are there in order to ensure that public resources are managed to the highest possible standard. So they are not intended to lock out anybody. And as I told you, every county can in fact borrow. It can raise money from the capital markets. And of course, this is done within certain rules. Brenda.
Laikipia Governor Nderitu Mureithi, I'd like to say asante sana for joining us here on KTN News Center this morning, just to tell